we are in this together.
You have gifts that I don't have, and I have gifts that you don't have.
That we must see. Now is the time, because it's when we all get together that we will make the changes that we must make. We are the world.
Welcome to Malcolm and We, brought to you exclusively on malcolmpresents.com. And welcome Yana, welcome Peggy. And this week we have a Peggy Berry. Yana, do the formalities. Introduce, tell us all about Peggy.
Well, Peggy Berry, PhD, has a lot of initials after her name, which doesn't begin to describe all that she knows and does. Among her areas of focus are occupational safety of employees, especially regarding workplace bullying, and health, again in the workplace, but also of all people. As CEO of Private Life Working Solutions, she encourages a safe space to talk about all sorts of subjects, including workplace issues, domestic violence, and environmental concerns, such as clean air, water, and soil. Welcome, and thanks for talking with us, Peggy. And also, want to talk about your event tonight, eco-ableism. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's back up. The Thrive at Life is my for-profit business. I also developed a 501c3 called Between the Waters. Between the Waters is a fiscal sponsor for the A to Z impacts of plastics and the petrochemical industry. And I'll talk a little bit about that before going into eco-ableism. We are a group of great people. They are so wonderful. We have Climate Reality as part of the group. We have the Indigenous Environmental Network. Also, I think you know BJ. BJ's been on our team for 2 years. BJ McMahon, Brenda Jo. What did I do? Okay. And she's on it. And then Between the Waters. And Mary Aguilera, who's been with the Poor People's Campaign and Sierra Club. And I'm also a Sierra Club member, and I've done things with Moms Clean Air Force, with the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, Buckeye Environmental Network, and the list can go on and on and on if I let it. The initials behind my name, I have a PhD in philosophy, primarily nursing. I'm a registered nurse. I'm certified as an occupational health nurse specialist, certified lean ergonomist, a fellow with the Workplace Bullying Institute, as well as a fellow with the American Association of Occupational Health Nurses. And you just like accumulate the initials behind your name.
You don't look like you're 103 to get all these credentials.
Oh well, I have been a nurse since 1977. So I always like to say I'm older than I look. It takes a lot to keep my face up, right? But I got on.
Yeah. What is the name of your company?
Okay, Thrive at Life Working Solutions. That's my for-profit side.
Thrive at
and
Life.
Between the Waters, which is a 501c3. I'm also a League of Women Voters member, and I go on the Ohio State Board in June. So mostly I work part-time at things that I can make money. And then the other side is I volunteer a lot of hours with the East Palestine train derailment. I was even talking to the Democratic whip in Columbus on the need for medical monitoring with the vinyl chloride that had spilled. And they're still testing positive for vinyl chloride. So they will need medical monitoring the rest of their lives within this accident.
Now, what is your main thrust of activity at present? You say you're doing something tonight.
Yes, we are presenting the A to Z impacts of plastics and the petrochem, our fossil fuel industry. We will be discussing eco-ableism. And our speaker will be Jason Hallmark. He is an employee of Climate Reality Project, and he is also what we would call the occult disability. He has multiple sclerosis. So at times he looks perfectly fine, and then the next day he could be exhausted and experiencing more problems with multiple sclerosis. And what he will go into tonight is how this climate crisis will exacerbate symptoms of people with disability. So, and there'll be a back and forth with the mental health that goes along with it, and what we can do moving forward in helping those who are disabled with climate change, as well as like East Palestine, their train derailment. Not everybody who was disabled are able to go back into their houses after a disaster. So we'll get into all of that. And Jason's the one who's talking about it. I usually go into health effects with climate change, with coal ash, with PFAS. That's my gig. I go into health since I'm a nurse. What can I say?
I recently got my my training with the Climate Reality Leadership Corps. So I really want to connect with a lot of those people because that's the way I can do my advocacy, is by being able to have them come on and speak about what they do and how they're reaching out.
Yeah, definitely. They're a good group of people. You know, I haven't found one environmental activist that I haven't liked.
Yeah.
You know, we're all good people.
That's right. We care.
We care. But you know what? Nurses too care. But when we get overly stressed, we start to decompensate between short staff and the pandemic. So we also have to deal with our own mental health first. You know, it's like when you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask goes down, we really need to start putting that oxygen mask on first so that we can assist others in getting their own oxygen mask on. And that's even with environmental activists. We have to take care of ourselves mentally, because we don't see the big, we see the big picture and it scares us. But there's so many little victories that sooner or later it's going to build up into an even bigger victory.
It's saying that you're a nurse, a registered nurse, and we're just, I don't know, over the pandemic. How do you handle death? I mean, to me, that would be the, you know, especially, you know, during the whole pandemic, where you see people waiting in the hallways who are dying, and you can't do anything because you don't have the facilities, and you meet the relatives and the people. How do you handle it as a nurse or as a person?
As a person. Okay, well, you know, that brings me to another story, okay? When I first graduated as a registered nurse, okay, I was in CCUs and step down units. I in my lifetime, I was in a neurointensive care. I was in a respiratory care unit. And as I watched a person die on a respirator, because back then they didn't have living wills, and they couldn't take them off respirators till somebody pronounced them dead. I went, that is a horrible way to die. So there's good deaths and there's not good deaths. So when I moved to Dayton, Ohio, I worked for Hospice of Dayton for 3 years, and I learned what good death is. Now, with the pandemic, I will tell you that personally, I do not do patient care anymore, which is really good. You know, I left the bedside in 1990 because I have back problems, really not nice back problems. So I can't lift, I can't turn patients. I can only be on my feet so long. I've had 2 back surgeries, and in July, I'm probably going to have a complete fusion. So that's why I'm not doing direct care. But just because I'm not doing direct care doesn't mean that I am not concerned about the nurses doing bedside care and ER care, where during the pandemic, they did not have the right personal protective equipment, and they had to reuse throwaway personal protective equipment. They didn't have the supplies they needed. They couldn't do what they needed to do, even to make people comfortable, because in the beginning, this disease was what? 65% died, especially our age. All right, I'm gonna admit, I'm 69 years old. I may not look it, but I'm 69 years old. All right. That in itself is a, what is it called? A problem. You know, it's one of those things that public health sets, you need to have your immunization for COVID. You need all your sets of pneumonia shots. So for those people who were compliant, I think the disease, COVID, was much better for them because of the vaccine. Now, that's not to say people like Jason, who has multiple sclerosis or multiple chemical sensitivity, couldn't take the injection, and they had to be really careful about who they met and what they did. But I've not had a problem coping with death because of my own education and training and the time I spent with hospice. But I do know that nurses are at a higher risk of suicide. And I think the Dayton Daily News just put out that the general population, they had an 8% increase in suicide in 2021. Can you imagine what the health professionals are doing in terms of suicide? And I got published on that very subject, that suicide is not painless. And for every suicide, about 185 people are affected just by that one death. And with nurses, they have a higher percentage than the general population in committing suicide. So the American Nurses Association is doing their level best to reach out and help people be more resilient. They have mentoring, they have mental health. I have an app called Balance that was given to me for free through ANA, just to have mindfulness exercises and meditation. So we need to do that for ourselves. Even environmentalists need to do it for themselves and journal. I journal all the time. I'm not that consistent, but I do it almost every day. It depends, you know. Sometimes I just like to sit there and scroll through Facebook, but I get a little tired of that, and then I get busy and start working again. So
yes. Sometimes you know, when I was watching the news during the pandemic, and they were interviewing the the healthcare people, the doctors and the nurses, and
Mhm.
you saw the pictures of the bodies lined up that they couldn't save. That if things were normal, they might have been able to treat them and save them, but because of the vast numbers, they just couldn't do anything. And then sort of
There weren't enough respirators.
no,
There
and
weren't enough respirators. And then the aspect of long COVID now, where healthy, prior to COVID, healthy people end up with cardiovascular issues and hypertension and other disabilities because of long COVID. And I've been fortunate. I've had COVID. I went on Paxlovid almost immediately because I just had surgery, so I was justified as a need for it, and I did very well with it. My husband has long COVID, so
I don't know if we really know the extent of long COVID, how many people have it. Sometimes I've had COVID and I think I don't have long COVID, but I notice I get more tired than I normally was. And I don't want to blame it on long COVID. I just blame it on age. But you really don't know. And I don't think there's a way of testing.
No, they just look at it and say, yeah, I think you have long COVID. I don't know that there's any markers in the blood. I would really have to research that to give you a definitive answer.
But what I get worried about, if I have to worry about something, is the way scientists are playing with the different microbes and the different diseases and manufacturing new ones. And there's so many things that they find out that they don't know what it is. Like the flesh eating,
or the one that goes into the amoeba that goes into your brain, and that's
right.
it. And it's only one amoeba. It only takes one, and boom. Flesh-eating bacteria. Why can't they turn it around and eat all the oil that's spilled into the ocean?
Eat all the negative things in our body. Well, I remember years ago I got into fasting, and according to at least the theory at that time, when you fast, really fast, where the body eats off itself. When you're starving, the body eats off itself. And supposedly the body would eat all the diseased organisms that you have, and all the disease, not the healthy part of you.
You would think, yeah, but not necessarily. Fasting's good. Intermittent fasting is probably the best. And for those who are really into it, more power to you. I like food.
Yeah, I like eating. You're with me. I like the eating. But now on a practical level, what do you do, let's say, with the, for the plastics problem? I know that's a major thing because plastics don't go away. They don't dissolve.
And if you're using plastic products, it actually degrades into your food that you might be storing. You may not have seen it, but I have a canning glass that, you could put stuff in, but I tend to put ice water in it, and I drink ice water that's been filtered all day long.
That's a big jar. I'd probably fill it all over me.
I try to get my 64 ounces in a day. It counteracts the 3 cups of coffee I do.
Actually, now they're recommending more, especially as we get older. Because a problem is that actually when we get older, we don't realize that we're thirsty. Or you don't have to be thirsty to lack water. And I think a majority, they say a major portion of people, older people who faint or fall down, it's because of dehydration.
Yeah, that's true. Or they've messed up on their drugs. Their medication. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say drugs, their medication.
Yeah.
No, I
And
want to
so,
take drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Hey,
you know,
now,
it's
how much time do we have left? I wanted to ask Peggy about the voting world and what the League of Women Voters is.
We have 11
Oh.
minutes. Go.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
All right. So tonight too, they are doing. Oh, are we just talking Ohio? If we're talking,
Anything.
Ohio, the League of Women Voters and their collaborators, so to speak, marched in Columbus, Ohio, because they are like working on trying to eliminate gerrymandering, as well as the fact that our Ohio legislation is trying to change the Constitution so that people can't put petitions forward to become law. So the League of Women Voters with the United States also is in a fight for gerrymandering and keeps really close tabs on the fact that education is on the chopping board. And you've heard all of that stuff about critical race theory. And people who talk about critical race theory as a negative thing don't understand what critical race theory is anyway. And then you have, as I said, the gerrymandering, but you have certain specific state legislators that are trying to stop any referendum that would help with reproductive health. Now, some people will say, hey, you're an abortionist. I am not. I believe, though, that reproductive health should not be screwed with. I mean, who carries the baby? And I liked what Pete Buttigieg said about abortion, especially late-term abortion. You'd have to run that. It's just a woman doesn't just go and get an abortion. She is weighing all of the factors, her health, her ability to provide, etc. So, and for me and mine, I have a 22-year-old grandson that I had an unwed daughter, totally embraced her. She lived with me a year after he was born, so we could take care of them as they moved forward. And I believe every woman has the right to decide between her and her doctor, period. So reproductive health is on the chopping block with many states, and it needs to be stopped, because who's voting it? Sorry to say this, Malcolm. Men mostly are voting for this rule.
Old white men.
But mostly, yeah, white men.
Old.
I'm not a feminist Nazi either. You know, just ask my husband. You know, I like men. All right, but I don't understand why this.
Well, why are we going backwards?
I believe we are going backwards. You know,
why?
I'd like to say it's because our brains have been poisoned by PFAS and we're losing our intellect. Okay,
there you go. I think that's a good theory.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, you know, but I don't know why. But just remember, you know, this is something that, in order to placate conservative, I will say conservative Christians, our legislation and fundamentalists, they are only supporting no abortions after a heartbeat is seen. That's 8 weeks or 12 weeks tops, you know, and some women don't know they're pregnant within, some of them could go 4 or 5 months before they figure it out, you know, because they've not had the education they need.
All
in
right. Well,
terms of
the
protecting
way they want to
themselves.
suppress education, women don't know how they become pregnant.
That's
It's
right.
a mystery.
It's a mystery. How did
I,
this happen?
I
Yeah,
forget. I think it's in Florida where they have the law that up to a certain age they can't even teach anything about the body and
and that's a really bad mistake, because you hear on the radio and TV that now they're seeing more colon cancer in age group 35 and up, and it used to be 45 or 55 and up. 55 and up should be doing very serious preventive stuff for colon cancer. Now it's down to 35. And why is that? That's called a toxic soup that we live in. So the more we can take care of our environment, our water, our food, our air, the healthier we will be. Period.
oh, definitely. It's
Yeah.
do you advise people about health? I mean, do you do one-on-one with anything, or do you conduct classes on health and
I used to. Okay. I'm a national speaker, and I spoke on workplace bullying prevention this past March, and on suicide and healthcare. So I speak nationally at this point in time. I'm going to be doing some mental health, or what was a psychological first aid training with Ohio Poor People's Campaign in June before they go to DC. So, as my husband says, I give it away for free. I also mentor nurses, and I enjoy mentoring and lifting up people's spirits. But do I do health? I don't know. If I can't convince my husband, how good am I anyway?
Husbands are hard.
well,
Husbands
I
are
think he's
hard.
selfish. He wants more of your time because
That could be.
Sometimes it's like that. Yeah. Don't eat that.
Tell him to
That's
get in
poison.
line.
Yeah, that's okay. So if someone were to ask me a question, I would preface it with, I can talk to you about it. But if I see something, I'm going to say, go talk to your healthcare provider. I am a nurse. Doctors will provide care. So when I was an occupational safety and health manager for a corporation of 3,000 people, I had 24-hour coverage for that facility. And one day somebody came in and I looked at this mole, and it was cancer, the bad kind. And I saved his life because I encouraged him to go see his dermatologist, and that he had it removed. So, do I do one-on-one? No, I primarily just do pharmacy reviews, as well as do administrative functions for the Ohio Association of Health Nurses.
I'll tell you, it seems like MalcolmPresents.com is becoming more. Well, what I want to do is, I mean, mainly I do interview shows like this, the half hour, but I want to do more, maybe 10-minute vignettes. And maybe we could get together and you could produce like a 10-minute thing about something. Yeah,
About something, yeah.
about something that you're
And
about
you could get paid.
Huh?
And
something
you could
about
get
plastic.
paid.
Yeah,
Plastic and babies.
plastic and babies.
The fact that Appalachia women and infants have higher mortality and morbidity from longstanding coal ash ponds, and all of the fracking that they're doing down there. Yeah, I can talk to that. I can also talk workplace bullying, because that's a biggie. Whether you're in healthcare or on a factory floor, bullying occurs, and that's
Domestic
another thing.
violence too, you mentioned.
And that's kind of like what got me into being a environmental activist, because I feel like when governments or companies don't listen to the surrounding community on the damage they're actually doing, that's aggression. That's aggression to violence, and it has to stop. We have to have safer factories, safer healthcare facilities. I mean, we just have to do a better job protecting our workers.
Yeah, it's not
And
the
the
1600s
environment is
anymore.
one, and safety and health is another.
Anyway,
Yeah.
our time is almost up. Do you have any last minute suggestions, or do you have a website where people could go to and find out what you're up to?
Well, I've got a couple of, well, Facebook. You have the A to Z impacts of plastics and fossil fuels. We also, I also have a website called Between the Waters, and you can go to that. It's still it's not as extensive as we. Okay, you guys, wow, I did look a little bit. All right, but it's kind of like a WordPress, and I put it off with my Thrive at Life Working Solutions WordPress. I do blogs sometimes, not real. You got to have time to do it, but I'm running around too much. Okay, so
Yes, but speaking about time, we're all out of time as you hear my beeper going off. Thank you very much.
sure.
Thank
for
you,
coming
It was
aboard.
great.
My goodness.
And we'd love to have you back. We can make that arrangements with Yana and talk about whatever you're working on at that particular time, because you have a whole load of work to do.
Oh gosh, yeah, whole lot of work to do. So I hope I see you tonight on eco ableism. It's going to be awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Facebook, 7 o'clock.
Thanks again, Peggy. Yana, I will see you next week.
Yes.
And you're listening to Malcolm and We, heard on malcolmpresents.com, a new streaming service. Tell your friends about it. Tell your friends about the show. Bye.
Bye.
The objective of the organization We the World is to facilitate cooperation on a global scale amongst groups and individuals dedicated to implementing solutions to the many challenges we face on the planet at this time.